Back with another episode of Living in Granbury and Beyond. Today we're going to do a comparison. What are the pros and cons of living in Fort Worth versus Granbury? Which one's better for you? What's your situation? So we're going to do an evaluation of both of those cities and help weigh the pros and cons that you have to decide is going to be better or worse for you and your family. So if this is your first time to the channel, we really appreciate you tuning in to today's episode where we compare Fort Worth and Granbury to help you decide which one is the better fit for you. Be sure to click that subscribe button and press the bell for notifications so you'll be the first to know of any changes or updates here in the Granbury-Fort Worth market. We have people call and reach out to us all the time. Sometimes they're 3 months out, sometimes 6 months, sometimes they're even a year out. Feel free to reach out to us, call, text, email anytime. We would love to give advice or help you make decisions or weigh some of the options that are on your plate as you try to decide where you want to move or what the best fit for you is. All right, so jumping in, pros and cons of Fort Worth versus Granbury. We're going to just start by doing an evaluation of both cities, and we're just going to quickly run through some of the things that you need to consider. So Fort Worth obviously has a lot more options for shopping. I have people that reach out to me sometimes who will have as a requirement, they have to be near a Costco. They have a family and they do a lot of shopping for groceries and they want to have, good quality food. Not only is Costco, but you also have Central Market, which has some of the best meats that you can get really in the state of Texas. So you have that there in Fort Worth. You have Costco. You have Sam's, you have other restaurants, you have other food, whole food stores and things that are going to be much more plenteous there in the Fort Worth market versus Granbury. Not only do you have more shopping, you have more just overall restaurants. There are a lot of great places to eat in Fort Worth. I mean, really standouts. You have just a lot of fantastic options. In the Granbury area, you've got some really good spots, but there's not a bunch of them. They can be hit or miss. And so when you find the good ones, you kind of have these limited options for really good restaurants. Now, you can drive into Fort Worth, so you're not that far. But some people don't want to do that. They would rather live in proximity to a lot of these other options. Obviously, the job market in Fort Worth is far superior to Granbury. As a matter of fact, a lot of people will actually drive from Granbury to Fort Worth for their jobs. Now, that has to raise a question. Why would they do that? And we're going to get into that in a minute about some of the benefits of living in Granbury, because it's even worth it for some folks to live in Granbury and work in Fort Worth, even though it has to increase sometimes double or even triple their drive time. And we're going to cover more of that in just a second. Sometimes people choose to live in Fort Worth, not because they work in Fort Worth, but because they travel internationally and you have the airport there. And so living close to the airport becomes a very key factor in deciding where someone wants to live. And so that's one thing, if you have to travel a lot, maybe being quick access to the airport is a key consideration. Looking at Fort Worth, you have a lot more new home developments. We're going to cover a few neighborhoods here in a second, but you have a lot more new developments that are being built all over the place. And so there's, I would say, a lot more competition between new homes. And so you've seen Fort Worth prices actually begin to be driven down by all of the new construction that's happening. In Granbury, there's just not that much inventory, and therefore prices tend to be a little bit higher than what you're going to see in Fort Worth. Now, a lot of times that's offset considerably by the property taxes, because Granbury is far less in property taxes than Fort Worth. So while the prices tend to be a little lower in Fort Worth for the same home, when you get in Granbury, you have a lot lower monthly payments. So, and if you take out monthly payments, you have a lot lower property taxes. So just less expenditure overall. And last, for Fort Worth, there are a lot of lower price options. In Granbury, when you get below a certain price point, it's hard to find a home, especially a site built on a slab. It's really hard to find that at a certain price point in Granbury. You can, but it's just not a lot. Fort Worth has a lot more options for that sort of buyer. So that is also one consideration. All right, so what about Granbury? If we're going to look at Granbury, what are some of the pros that you would want to look at for Granbury? Well, you have a small conservative town. That's not what you're getting in Fort Worth. In Granbury, that small conservative town is going to have a family-friendly feel. Everybody knows everybody. People are going to be friendly with you when you come in, and it's just going to be a different interaction with the people of the city in Granbury than it is in Fort Worth. And for some people, that's really important. If you have kids and you're getting to know families, it's just going to be a different environment. And so for many, that is a huge pro for Granbury. You're going to have less interstate traffic. So Granbury, you don't have to travel interstate to get, to places. So there's not a lot of that interstate traffic. Interstate traffic can be the most brutal of all of the traffics that are around. So we have some bottleneck traffic in Granbury in certain areas, but there's a different stress level when you're going 70 on interstate, and also wrecks when freezes happen and stuff. It's just a lot more dangerous out on the interstate usually. So I know some folks saw that bad wreck in Dallas a couple of years ago during the freeze. Anyway, I think it's not a major point, but I think less interstate traffic as you move to and fro does help. There's a con to that. You're not as close to the interstate, so if you have to get on the interstate, it's a further drive to get there, so that could be a con in one sense. So Granbury, it's more opportunity for entrepreneurs because there's less competition. If you're going to start a business in Fort Worth, there's going to be a bunch of them. In Granbury, sometimes it's not really that many. A good friend of mine has started a junk removal business, and it just boomed. He got really successful, and then moved on to something else. But it was easy to get started up and kind of dominate the market. If you were in Fort Worth, it may have been a little more difficult to do that. So that is one consideration. When looking at Granbury, you have less permitting requirements. In Fort Worth, plumbers. I have plumbers that are on staff for me and my brokerage or my property management company. And when I send them out, in Fort Worth, there's just a lot more headache to do a plumbing job than it is in Granbury. So it's just a lot more permitting, a lot more red tape that you got to go through in the Fort Worth area. Okay, last pro for Granbury that we're going to hit before we jump into some neighborhoods in Fort Worth is the lower property taxes. It's not just lower, it's a lot lower. If you just compare a $400,000 home, let's just run the numbers on what it would look like in Fort Worth. So a $400,000 home assessed at $400,000, if you run the taxes on that, you're going to be looking at about $9,000. Okay, $9,000. Now, if you go look at that same home in Granbury, you're going to be looking at $4,800. So you're looking at basically double. So let's just run that $4,500 more. Divide that by 12. It's $375 a month more in property taxes to get the same price home in Tarrant County in the Fort Worth side. Okay, so that as a perspective, why is it that some people choose to live in Granbury and work at the airport or work at Lockheed? Because they're saving, $400 or $500 a month in property taxes. That's one of the big factors. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to hit kind of a map view. We're going to look at a few neighborhoods, and I hope that you find this helpful. So starting here at Bentwater, we're going to look from Bentwater, which is a premier Granbury neighborhood, to the DFW airport is 1 hour and 4 minutes drive. It's 62 miles. 1 hour basically from Bentwater to the DFW airport. That's what you're looking at. 1.2% tax rate. So if you're looking at homes in this neighborhood, you're going to save well over $5,000 a year compared to the same priced home in Fort Worth. But you're going to have an hour drive time. So that is a consideration. If you got to drive there, 5 days a week, time is, the most valuable commodity that we have, and you waste a lot of it on the road driving. So this is Gemstone Estates. If we look at Sardius, the DFW airport, this is going to be a little bit lower priced home, in the 300,000 range, 250 to 325 or so. And looking from there all the way to the airport, you're looking at 57 minutes, basically an hour. Okay, so same. If we go look at one of my favorite neighborhoods in Fort Worth, which is Ridgely Hills, you're looking at 30 minutes to the DFW airport, half the time. And you're not trying to be close to the airport here. You're just in a little southern neighborhood that's a beautiful neighborhood in Fort Worth. If we go look at Wedgwood to Lockheed Martin, you're looking at 21 minutes, 10 miles, 21 minutes to Lockheed Martin. Now we can go to the Granbury side. Lockheed Martin, if you're driving there and you're living at Gemstone Estates, you're looking at about a 36-minute drive, which is really not that bad. If you really, that's going to be about as quick of access as you can get from Granbury. Now, if you're looking at Granbury, there is an important point to note. You have limited options if you're going to be making this commute. You're not going to go live in Granbury on the opposite side of town and drive to Fort Worth, and I'm going to tell you why. So this is what we call the Fort Worth side of Granbury, and we have a lot of people that live here and work in Fort Worth. What you do not want to do is live here and work in Fort Worth, because the drive from here to here is about 20 to 25 minutes, depending on traffic. So you're literally adding another 30 minutes by living on this side. I have some people that do it, and they're ready to sell and move because it was not a very pleasant experience for them. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here in terms of the map. Let's pull in some neighborhoods in Fort Worth that I would recommend looking at if someone is interested in looking at Fort Worth. There are 3 neighborhoods I'm going to mention. There's a ton of them. I'm going to mention a few Granbury ones as well. But to start with, this is probably one of my favorites, Ridgely Hills in Fort Worth. Fantastic neighborhood, beautiful trees, very scenic, lots of stores and shopping. People ride their bikes, go on trails. So great area. Really like this area. I mentioned that my wife taught at a classical school. That classical school was right around here. My favorite coffee shop in the city of Fort Worth is right down. See if we can find it. My favorite coffee shop in Fort Worth is right here, the Fort Worth Coffee Company. And my wife taught, there's where she taught, the Oaks Tutorial. So the Fort Worth Coffee Company, fantastic coffee. I go by there and pick it up. Still to this day, when I'm in Fort Worth, I drop by and pick up some of their coffee to use here at home. So Arlington Heights is a great neighborhood, has a lot of history. There's actually a book on Amazon on Arlington Heights where you can learn about all the history that happened here, going back to the Civil War and World War II and World War I. So it's just a fantastic, rich history that's here in the Arlington Heights area. You're centrally located in Fort Worth, quick access pretty much to anything, and it is older homes here, so you have to worry about like cast iron plumbing and things of that nature. So there are things you want to be on the lookout for if you're looking at a neighborhood like this. But what you get is this rich history, especially if the plumbing and stuff's been updated. Very cool spot. So we would recommend it. Now, an updated, newer community that is just beautiful. I mean, this is going to be a neighborhood that's going to be around for generations. Very well built, very well planned out. And if you're thinking about looking at or living in the Fort Worth area, I believe Walsh is going to be zoned for the Aledo ISD, which is the top rated schools. And it's hard to beat this neighborhood if you go through it. I did a video on this a while back for Walsh Ranch, but this is one that you might want to look at. Again, property taxes are going to be far higher than Granbury, but you have a lot of trade-offs. You got to decide, if it's worth it for you. I mentioned Bentwater as far as a Granbury neighborhood a little earlier, so here's a video that I did in Bentwater. It's a great neighborhood. It has really in the $500,000 to $800,000 range is really going to be the sweet spot for Bentwater. Obviously, you have some that go up $3-4 million if they're on main body, but most of the homes in there are going to be around the $700,000 to $800,000 range, I would say. If you're looking for a place that has boat slips, a lot of the boat slips in Granbury get sold out, so there's a waiting list, or they're very expensive. You have deeded boat slips that come with every lot in Bentwater. Mallard Point, which is a sister neighborhood, is included in this discussion, so you don't have to know that, but if you reached out to me, we would kind of include both of those into one search. But this is a great neighborhood, quick access to the airport, quick access to Lockheed, as quick as you can get in Granbury and have one of these premier homes. So that's one piece of information, one piece of the puzzle. If you're looking to live in Granbury but work out in Fort Worth or in the Metroplex, I would recommend this. If you were saying, look, I don't really want to drive into Fort Worth and I'm just wanting to get my feet wet and learn a little bit more about Granbury, I would send you to this neighborhood, which is, it is hard to overestimate the amenities that are in this neighborhood. You've got 2 landing strips for pilots. You've got 2 golf courses. You've got tennis courts, pickleball courts. You've got a basketball court. You've got pools, parks, frisbee golf, you name it, it's here. They have their own gas station. They have a grocery store. They have an Ace Hardware. They've got a coffee shop, all inside of the neighborhood. So I personally live inside this neighborhood. So if you're thinking about this area, I don't have to drive to Fort Worth every day for work. So it's not an issue for me. But for some, if it is, then this neighborhood might not be the best fit, because I could take you back. If we go look at Granbury, this little Texas shape here is pecan right here. This little Texas shape place is Pecan Plantation, and you've got to drive all the way up here to hit 377, and so it does increase drive time somewhat. But if you're not really thinking about making the drive to Fort Worth, this would be a neighborhood that I would recommend to you. And if this is the first time you've really started to dive into Granbury, I've got a lot more videos on some of the different areas that you might want to consider. So there might be, you might just be starting this rabbit trail of learning more about the city of Granbury. If so, reach out to me. I would love to chat with you or answer any questions you have. If you're just looking at Fort Worth and you're trying to decide if you want to live there and what are some options, we'd love to visit with you about that as well. So any questions you have, we'd love to jump into it. I'm going to do one little mention of some premier properties. If your budget is around the $1 million mark, 800 to 1.2, 1.3, there is a neighborhood that I would recommend you look at. And it also is going to be on the Fort Worth side of Granbury, and it's even further. It's on the edge, really, in a city called Crescent, but it's basically Granbury. You have access to everything from this neighborhood, and it's quite a nice neighborhood. I've looked at a few homes in there. Scenic views, hard to beat. This would be one little special mention. If you wanted to look at some really nice homes that would get you into the lower property taxes, quick access to Fort Worth, quick access to Granbury, quick access all around, this would be one that I would highly recommend you check out. So with that, we're going to sign off. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, if you have any questions, want any advice, reach out to me, call, text, or email. If I don't hear from you, I hope to see you around Granbury, Fort Worth sometime.